We all like to imagine that if history placed us in a moment of deep systemic injustice, we would do the right thing. We assume our moral compass would instinctively kick in, guiding us to pause and stand firm while the crowd goes the wrong way. But virtue is rarely a spontaneous reflex. It is a deliberately practiced habit. The military calls this spiritual fitness, the developed capacity to choose what is right over what is convenient, repeatedly, until doing the hard thing becomes second nature. To see what that developed capacity actually looks like under pressure, look at Mary Peake. She was born a free Black woman in 1823, stepping into a society designed to constrain her. Following Nat Turner's 1831 rebellion, Virginia lawmakers weaponized the legal system to cement their control. They passed harsh restrictions, making the education of Black people illegal. Teaching a Black child or adult to read became a literal crime against the state. This created an environment known as the ethical midfield. It is the dangerous space where the law is perfectly clear, but the institution itself is morally bankrupt. Anyone living in that space is forced to choose between legal compliance and moral necessity. Long before the Civil War broke out, Peake made her choice. At profound risk to her own safety, she began teaching free and enslaved people to read in secret, hiding her classroom from the authorities. Her actions defined the first standard of moral action, confronting wrong rules. She did not rebel because she disliked a mandate or found it inconvenient. She recognized a grave moral wrong and chose to defy it only because no lawful alternative existed. That dynamic shifted in 1861. As the war began, Union General Benjamin Butler refused to return freedom seekers who reached his lines, declaring them contraband of war. Overnight, Fort Monroe became an enclave of emancipation, widely known as Freedom's Fortress. A lawful pathway had finally opened. The Confederacy immediately recognized the threat of this safe haven. In August, Confederate forces marched into the adjacent town of Hampton to deny shelter to the arriving freedom seekers. They burned the town to the ground, block by block, turning hundreds of homes, including Mary Peake's own house, to ash. Having lost her home, Peake did not quit. Instead, she stepped directly into the light. She moved her classroom outdoors, gathering students under the sprawling branches of the Emancipation Oak. With a legal pathway now available, her class grew from 6 students to 50 in a matter of days. True integrity requires using proper, lawful channels to do right the exact moment they become available. Peake refused to let the loss of her property or the destruction around her serve as an excuse to retreat. Her daily routine was relentless. By day, she taught children the alphabet. At night, she ran a second class for adults, including Union soldiers stationed nearby who had never learned to read. She maintained this schedule while suffering from terminal tuberculosis. As her physical strength failed, she continued to stand at the front of her class. This brings us to the second operational standard. Conviction has a cost. A belief that costs you nothing is merely an opinion. True conviction is only proven when you are willing to pay a personal price to hold the line. Peake died in February 1862 at the age of 39. She never saw the war end. But the educational foundation she laid beneath that tree, at the cost of her own remaining days, eventually grew into Hampton University. Her greatness was not a product of specialized intellect or formal training. It was entirely rooted in her willingness to spend her own life to execute what she knew was right, without waiting for permission or safety. While the systemic defiance of 1860s Virginia feels distant, the mechanism of moral choice remains identical. For most of us, our most frequent ethics laboratory is not a battlefield. It is our own home. Families run on unspoken rules, and some of those patterns are quietly wrong, a habit that shames a child, or a silence that lets resentment harden. Spiritual fitness requires the courage to name and confront those harms directly, rather than letting peace at any cost dictate the environment. The cost of conviction at home is paid in domestic currency. It looks like swallowing your pride, stepping back to help, or offering a difficult apology. Love that has never been deeply inconvenient has not yet been truly tested. This diagram illustrates a vital distinction, the difference between an injustice and an inconvenience. The trap is confusing a bruised ego with a moral wrong. Run an honest audit. Are you fighting a true moral harm, Or are you simply tired and unwilling to bend? The ultimate goal is to build what we call the human anchor. This is a person with enough developed character to hold their moral clarity, admitting when they are wrong, and holding the line when right, even under intense pressure. The gap between doing what is easy and doing what is right is closed entirely by daily habits. Practicing virtue in the small, deeply inconvenient moments at home is the exact training required to stand firm when the wider world demands our courage.